watching AYV Television.
Sierra Leone's real GDP growth is expected to average 4.4% during 2022 to 2024, with contributions from mining and agriculture and a partial recovery in tourism and manufacturing. However, the growth outlook faces significant downside risks and uncertainties due to the war in Ukraine, global inflationary pressures, and the continued threats of COVID-19, according to the new World Bank Sierra Leone Economic Update. Headline inflation is expected to remain elevated in 2022 due to ongoing global supply chain disruptions. Tonight, we are zooming on the governance structure and the interventions to cushion the crisis in the country. My name is Samuel Wise Bangura, and this is AYV on Sunday. All right, welcome back to AYV on Sunday. To those of you watching us on Channel 33, listening to us on FM 101.7, or following us on all our different social media handles, especially those of you on the AYV Sierra Leone Facebook page, you are welcome. Just before we go into the main conversation for tonight, we all don't listen to one audio where they go around social media where people they call for protest. But the Sierra Leone police don't put out a statement, don't say they don't permit nobody, no group, no organization for make them go on with the Black Monday. So the audio they call on people, they're not for left them picking them for go school transport, not going on all of that. The police say they're not aware, let everybody go on in normal business tomorrow. But we also try for see if we can talk to the Inspector General of Police for just to reassure Salon people, say Sierra Leone is peaceful, everybody and everything goes on tomorrow as normal. And as always, we have people who are in touch with the issues we always discuss here. And like I mentioned earlier tonight, we're discussing the governance and economic trend in present-day Sierra Leone. With me the former Minister of Agriculture and Presidential Advisor to former President Kuruma, Dr. Sam Sise. Good evening and welcome to the show, Doc.
Good evening. Good evening, listeners.
All right, we have the current Minister of Information, Mohammed Rahman Swari. Good evening and welcome to the show, Mr. Minister.
Good evening, viewers and listeners.
All right, we look forward to receiving Maribob Kande to join the conversation. And but just for those of you watching, listening and following, you can always be part of the conversation. Share your thoughts, share your questions with us on the AYV Sierra Leone Facebook page. We'll find time to go through some of them. Dr. Samsise, let me start off with you for obvious reasons. Let's look at, we just want to have an elevated conversation where we don't just apportion blame, who is to be blamed, who is to be held responsible and all of that, but rather find a pathway that will lead to a better Sierra Leone for all of us. So let me start off with you on your assessment thus far with the current governance structure. We're pushing out for proportional representation. We've just launched the provisional results of the census, the National Population and Housing Census. What do you make of these moves?
Well, I must say that in terms of the proportional representation, you recall that that was brought to Sierra Leone, or Sierra Leone took that path because of very good reasons. An immediate post-conflict situation wherein access to all of the country was impossible. Conducting elections all over the country was impossible. And therefore, the need for a proportional representation in which the country was made one constituency.
Right.
And so the parties were really the candidates that contested, and therefore people voted for those parties. Depending on the score of those parties, seats were allocated to constituencies, and even in terms of the presidency, the party that had the highest score would have the president. So that was the system at that time.
Right.
It happened in 1996, 2002, but thereafter, there was a need for an amendment to the national constitution in order to accommodate that. Thereafter, in 2007, 2012, and 2018, we went back to normalcy, and the elections were held comprehensively. That is, voters were allowed to vote directly for their own choice at the ward level, at the constituency level, the district level, be it the councils, as well as the presidency. So we went back to normalcy. That was a clear sign of normalcy. But proportional is when really you have problems with access, security threats. And so that is what people are looking forward to. The point is that when you bring proportional representation, the biggest taker is the party. The party will determine the candidates for various areas. If we are taking district level, those candidates that will contest will be listed for that district, and the results that come out will be distributed proportionally to the candidate, to the parties based on the candidates. So the parties have the responsibility to choose the candidates. But in the normal process, that will now the democratic process, I will call it, people have the responsibility to vote for their councillors, to vote for their members of parliament, to vote for their chairpersons or mayors, to vote for the president. And so there is a bond. There is a direct social contract between the voted and those that were voted for. Those who voted and those that were voted for. And they can be held accountable, and if they don't perform, they can be changed. Now, in the proportional representation, you have a challenge there. You have the party to determine whether somebody should go or not, performing or not. So a big chunk of the civic responsibility, in fact, the legal responsibility, the constitutional responsibility of people to vote for their representatives will be taken away from them. And that, for me, is a big challenge.
So you're saying that proportional representation, if we're to go with that system now, it's definitely going to hamper democracy? It's not good for the timing?
Well, no, it's not about timing. I said for proportional, there was a condition. Before then, before we went into the war, we were using this normal system that went back to 2007 to 2018. But when the war came, there was a need for this system. Now that the war has gone, which was the reason for bringing in the PR, we are now in normalcy. So why can't we continue the system that we ever know?
All right, let me hear government's position on that. Because government is pushing proportional representation system, giving advancing arguments and many reasons why it is needed in today's Sierra Leone. So what are those reasons, Mr. Minister?
Yes, so, I mean, around the world, there is a treason that's one of the reasons for the shallow roots of African democracy is because of the winner-take-all approach, particularly to representation in parliament. Like Dr. C mentioned, we successfully experimented with those with the PR system. First, it was a district block, then the whole country was a constituency. You know, we experimented with those two in peculiar circumstances. The war was just ending. You know, people were displaced all over the place, right? So, I mean, that one needed no convincing. Everybody knew that was the right and proper thing to do. But to circumscribe it to just choices that happen after elections when you are able to reach many parts of the country is not the case. I mean, around the world, PR is being used to ensure greater and wider representation of citizens. It's used in Sri Lanka, Chile, Romania, Guatemala, Netherlands, Cambodia, Rwanda, Benin, all over the place. Various kinds are experimented with. You could do the rank system, the party list system, you know, various kinds abound. And it's not just because you are coming from a war, you cannot access some parts of your country or some parts of your population. One reason is that this form of democracy will practice this parliamentary system, right? The first past the post system. It's being pointed as one of the reasons for the shallow roots of African democracy, right? You look at the typical constituency, for example, Dr. Sisi, yours truly, and you, Samuel, contest in the constituency. Dr. Sisi gets, let us say, he gets 40% of the votes pool, yeah? You get 30%, I get 30%, right? You have a constituency, a district littered with that kind of arrangement. At the end of that election, even though more people have voted against Dr. Sam Sisi, right, in the constituency, he gets elected. because he pulled more votes down, each one of us as individuals, right? But in the PR system, it's, again, this is like when you go to a tailoring shop, you want to have a beautiful coat sewn. It's your size, your measurement is taken. So PR systems are tailored to the needs and circumstances of a country, right? So if this is what we are having problem with, we can always have our own variation, right? Our own variant of the PR system. Do we want the list system? Do we want the ranking system? Do we want district block? What do we want, right? So it does not mean that there are only these two types, district block or country block. There are a lot more other variations that can be explored, right? So that is one. The other bit, the other argument that weighs very heavily, I've lived long around here, he knows it, and this is common knowledge for all Sierra Leoneans. The average cost of a by-election goes into billions, right? When you do several of those, these are resources that could otherwise go to social welfare. They could go to providing basic social services and amenities, even in the very constituencies that the reruns take place. Again, we have seen unpunctuated violence, unbridled violence in by-elections, right? I mean, we have all seen them all over the place. So what the PR system does is it obviates that, because you already have, the model, at least the model we have practiced in the past, gives you, an alternative in case of somebody losing their seat, either through natural attrition, through whichever means, right? So it reduces the temperature, the political temperature, which normally reaches boiling point towards by-elections, during by-elections. So we believe really that the PR system is very good. Let's come to brass tacks, Sammy. Both of us here are politicians. I'm a political scientist. I have never spoken about that before, but this is fact. We have seen situations in the polls, in the national polls. You see, for example, Dr. Sisse's party pulling reasonably huge votes in places that are not perceived as strongholds in the southeastern places. But sadly enough, at the end of those elections, even when you are beaten by one vote, you do not get to be represented. So you have a large population of people who represent other views, other shades of opinion in various parts of the country who do not get represented because it's a winner-take-all arrangement. It's a first-past-the-poll arrangement. We think the PR system gives everybody a fair chance. Those voters who vote, no matter how dispersed those votes might be, judging from the old system, if it's a district block, no matter how dispersed they are, they always add up to something and they get represented. That is giving them voice in a place where they otherwise are silent, where their voices are eclipsed.
The strongest reason being advanced by Dr. Sam Sisse has to do with the constitution and mandate of the people electing their representatives directly. And he's saying the PR system takes away that power from the people. So where do we put the people in a democratic society like Sierra Leone to do with the PR system? Okay, so that brings me back to Athenian democracy. Back in Rome and Greece, all the people met in the market square, under a tree or wherever, in the court barrier or someplace to take decisions. That was the most representative form of democracy. But as countries have grown, as civilization entrenches around the world, people now have to have representatives. That is why you don't see my whole village coming to parliament. It's still representative democracy. Some people come to represent some people, right? Yeah, you get that? Yeah. So, by its very nature, by the very nature of constitution itself, so this, I think there is an undue, misrepresented emphasis on our people. The 77K, is it? They call it. Yeah, you don't vote on your own accord for the national interest. It's your party's interest. So what are you telling me? So somewhere along the line, you just vote and you still get held back by your party with the big Damascus sword hanging over your head. So we are now saying, look, with the PR system, you have some very good Sierra Leoneans who ordinarily might not want to subject themselves to the rigors of electoral politics, because it's almost a dogfight when it's elections. Some people would have worked in government, retired civil servants, retired diplomats, somewhere you are in your community, you are contributing to solving some of those problems there. Ordinarily,
You know, because you are a retired person, you would not want to subject yourself to rigors, having to spend money, you wouldn't want to spend your retirement and other resources, you know, and exposing yourself to the things that go to elective office campaigns. So you will get people like those coming to parliament. They have, you know, well-made people with ideas across the world to help shape debates and to make national contributions. So the PR system in all its shapes and forms, you know, is the very best this country needs now. I will come back to the issue of addressing cracks and crevices, divisions, and our wide polarization as a country.
Right.
That is one big argument already.
Right, exactly. Let me, Dr. Samson, you've listened to the submission of the minister.
Yes.
And he is saying already Sierra Leone needs a lot in terms of resources. So we do not need, I mean, things like by-elections where we would have to expend more money instead of utilizing, I mean, those monies in areas that need serious development. And he's also saying the PR system encourages competent Sierra Leoneans who would not want to go through the hassle, who would not want to go through the political violence that the first past the post presents. Are these things really strong right now for the PR system? Are these strong arguments that we must go with a PR system now?
I still have my reservations over the PR system, you know, as much as my colleague has, you know, clearly spelled out his own points of view supporting it. It has to do with commitment to the people. We cannot leave development totally with government. Government has its own limitation in terms of resources. And so there must be people who can also contribute in developing the country through their own areas of representation. If I'm a member of parliament, for example, and at parliament they used to give this community development fund, MP is expected to take this money and invest in their own area. You don't have to wait for government. In fact, I just came from home. A bridge was broken between two very important villages. We took upon ourselves to raise funds. I went around to talk to our people to raise money and do it. Now, you can only do that if you have this kind of responsibility. But the PR system, my worry about it is the party taking away responsibility for choice of people. And the people not really making the decisions. And therefore, the commitment of those that will go to parliament, to go to the councils, will be more to the party. If I'm good with the hierarchy of the party, I'm good to go, right? If I will not even bother with the people, I go to my home, they didn't elect me. What is my commitment to them? I'm only going to concern about my party. I make sure I support it, I contribute, I'm recognized, and then I have a chance to survive. That is, you know, we have to really look at it in that
So
angle.
you're saying who goes to parliament is determined by the political parties.
Correct.
And of course, we all know how politics work, how politics works in Sierra Leone. If you have a very fat purse or pockets, you can buy your way through. Right. So as candidates, they will be able to buy their way through the parties.
It's possible.
Because the people will not be in charge to choose who goes to parliament. Is that the argument?
That's the concern.
And that definitely takes away development from, because they feel that they are not committed to
development support to government.
So everything goes back to the parties.
Yes, parties will take responsibility.
But the minister cited 1K, for example, that gives members of parliament the power to pay allegiance to their political parties. I mean, put parties' interests above their constituency and above Sierra Leone. Is that not almost the same?
No, why do you want to... sometimes, even within a party, I may have a divergent view with the leadership. And for that reason, I'll be punished. But if I have the support of my people and I go to my area, we have had instances. Certain parties did not give symbol to certain candidates. And they went and appealed to their people, they went independent, or they went to other parties, and they won with the support of their people. In this case, that person, so liked by the people, very popular, would not have been in parliament.
Yeah, so I see there are a few things I have to advise my friend and brother, Dr. Sisi. Even when if APC MPs hear him talking about community development fund, he might get into trouble. They say that has been reconfigured as community facilitation fund. Yeah. So development is now, as per the local government and other acts, you know, rests squarely with local councils. So MPs coming to parliament really, you know, they can influence development, whether they are on a list, whether they are elected directly, but they are not by themselves responsible for development. Like the bridges, bridges you are talking about, you know, you also have called the attention of your local council to it, but it's a great effort that, you know, that's civic responsibility.
In practice,
that's responsible
in practice,
citizenry.
with the way politics goes in Sierra Leone, in practice, we've seen, I mean, even the members of parliament, when they were candidates,
of course, they still go spend the money.
They tell us they'll construct a school, they will do this, they will do that,
yes,
outside the constitution.
They make promises even where there are no bridges.
Sometimes some of them perform. Because exactly. I mean, the people can hold them accountable. But if we take that away now, that is what Dr. Samson says. If we take that away, then it means I can. If you are the chairman of my party, I can only come to you. And
well,
of course,
I have bad news for you. If you are a member of my party, my hypothetical party, for which you seek to run, and you think you can influence me, no normal party is going to allow deadwoods to populate its list. Deadwoods who do not have any relationship with their constituencies, or deadwoods who cannot contribute to pulling the numbers for them, right? No matter, you might have more money than sense. Even if you spend it as if it's expiring tomorrow, political parties are going to put people on the list who have a relationship with the constituency, who have a relationship with their people, who will garner the votes for them, right? So this idea that the people, you know, they will discard the people does not arise. We have seen it. When you choose unpopular people, or even on a list back then, right? Our people voted with their feet. No political party wants that. Yes, as to independent candidates, there's this impression that because it's a PR system, independent candidates will not. Because we have this notion of 1996 and 2002, right? We have not experimented other brands. So now, this is why we need an honest, sincere national conversation. How do we make provision for independent candidates in the PR system? All of this can be provided for. You know, this is something you can customize, you can tailor-make to suit your needs and your circumstances, right? So Sierra Leone clearly has a historic opportunity to do this, because we really honestly believe, you know, when President Bio was campaigning, well, then Brigadier retired Julius Maada Bio was campaigning, he did acknowledge the fact that the country was a deeply divided country. These are all parts of mechanisms to stitch it together, right? Beyond the Commission for Cohesion. We have to find
how will this PR system heal that political divide? Because evidently many people are of the view that Sierra Leone is deeply politically, I mean, polarized. The polarization is one that we cannot at this point put on the table at stool.
No.
So how do we...
let's get it clear. Nobody has said the PR system is a magic bullet that is going to let the polarization disappear tonight. We are saying it's part of the process. I did mention ab initio that one of the reasons why African democracy has shallow roots is this winner-take-all thing. I have also mentioned to you the scenario involving all three of us, right? The APC traditionally pulls a lot of votes in the south and east, same way the SLPP in the north and other parts of this country. But because of this moribund electoral system currently in force, these parties don't get to be represented. So if the APC is represented in the southeast, right, now you know you have an obligation to develop that part of the country. You have your people there, they have a voice, they can contribute to national development, which is not the case now, right? If you put all of the votes together that are pulled in Kenema district, for example, it's quite substantial to enable them to have a couple of seats, right? So development in that part of the country will be as important to them as Bombali will be to them. You know, so you now begin to see the country as a national constituency because you have representations all across this country.
All right. Let me just quickly hear from you, Dr. Samson. I mean, I have already hundreds of messages. We have to take few of them on the PR system, and then we continue the conversation. So let me hear you on the issue of Sierra Leone being politically divided along, I mean, the lines that we've always mentioned, and how the PR system can help to build that bridge to healing the political divide, because, for example, I mean, other political parties, depending on the percentage of votes, will be represented in parliament. And also the issue of gerrymandering. You know, this is something when the census, many people complain, oh, government wants to use, the figures to do gerrymandering, create new constituencies, boundaries and all of that, but with the PR system, that's not really needed.
It addresses it.
Listen, I still maintain my position. Looking at the historical data of election results,
right,
wherein in many times, for example, in the Southeast, zeros, very low scores have been announced for other parties that don't have strongholds there. So the possibility for them, the other parties, to be represented is very, very low, okay? And it is a concern. Yes, the other areas could be liberal. As we saw in 2018, I can give you the results. In 2018, truly, using the PR system, there was a possibility, let's say specifically SLPP would have got seats in the north, northwest, and the west, okay? But it would have been it would have hardly happened for APC and other opposition parties in the southeast because of the results that came out. And so it is still a concern as to whether really this is the answer to it. So I think that still the PR system is still, for me, we are yet to hear what more in the box. Otherwise, as I know it, it is a big question mark. Given the historical data, given the practice, the experience we have had, okay? And the issue of who really determines the representatives of the people, the party or the people themselves.
So it should be the people, according
to
the
people, that is it. So I believe that. I believe that.
All right.
Let me come back to my friend's statement that there are certain people who don't want to subject themselves to some rigors, political rigors. Maybe they are not used to it. But there are fine Sierra Leoneans. Yes, they can contribute to development. For me, the president has a biggest responsibility for reconciliation. To bring people who can really turn around the country, to bring people who can really help the government, okay? And that is a big chunk of reconciliation and, bringing people, unifying people. But for those elections, it is very difficult. People must work for their people, they must be appreciated, and therefore eventually in elections, they can be voted in, they can be compensated.
All right. Let me run through a few messages just quickly on this PR system. There is no country as small as Sierra Leone in size and population that uses proportional representation. Rico Ja is saying, let's Muzu Ja is saying we don't want it and their plans are to take us back into the dark days. Okay, we'll not. Let's just please send messages that speak to the issues and Masese is saying now that the 24th of June 2023 has been confirmed as the date for elections. We hope our politicians will shift a little bit from congratulating themselves to telling us what they have actually done to lift the country out of misery. Abdallah Keture saying the great democracies in the world use first past the post system. America, Britain, India, etc. Allow people to elect their representatives directly. Mr. Government. Consultation is one essential pillar that holds a PR system. Rather unfortunate, the understanding of consultation by this government is troubling. The PR system will definitely favor the ruling government, Brahma Conte is saying. Amara Alpha is saying, honestly, the new direction government of President Bio has done well in the past 4 years in the high office of the land, irrespective of unexpected circumstances in Sierra Leone and around the globe. For example, COVID-19 and now Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has created a negative impact on the people in the world, but most especially on the continent of Africa. The issue of the PR system means inclusiveness for every Sierra Leonean in the political landscape, and it's one of the best ways of practicing democracy in our beloved country, and which we must observe it under the new dispensation. Abubakar Rashid is saying if the proportional representation was good at that time in 1996 and 2002, why did the country revert to constituency arrangement by popular votes? I think it's disenfranchised the electorate and was not in conformity with the constitution. Lamin Denke is saying we need our constituency elections. We've seen a minister and thugs destroying ballot boxes. To date, no invitation, no arrest being made by Salon police. Violence is not an excuse if the police, reserves and PPRC are independent. Okay. Sultan Ahmed is saying in clear concepts we're not up to that standard for the PR system. What the minister is saying contains some elements of good, but in the other is such con artist strategy, allow the people to do their selection for themselves. So if anything happens, they got themselves to blame. Allow the people to sell themselves or to make themselves. I'm going to take 3 more messages, guys. You'd have to forgive me. So many of them. Your MPs actually want you to focus on the issue of proportional representation, which is not the actual problem. The bill gives the president more powers to control the electoral process, and it risks disenfranchising many voters. Stay vigilant and don't be fooled. Under the PR system, political parties would definitely determine who should represent them in parliament, which is not going for a democracy. Hassan Abdallah Toure. The final message I will take is from AR Kroma saying, with the PR system, they can kill. Okay, I'll skip that, I'm afraid. Ali Hassan Conte is saying, we're not going to allow the PR system because it is easy to tamper with election results than the constituency basis. SLPP hope with the PR system, they would, okay. I just wish we profile we talk more on the issues than accusing one another here. The final one I will take on this is from Musa Masako, Mr. Minister, and the PR system to do away with tribalism and regionalism in politics, more especially when these political parties favor their tribesmen and not the rivers. And what's the percentage of a political party has to pull to have a representation in both the council and parliament? All right. I would allow the 2 gentlemen to just quickly respond to these ones as we quickly have to go on with some other things in the conversation. I'll allow you first to go, Mr. Minister.
Yeah, somebody mentioned consultations are a solid basis for carrying on with the PR system. I could not agree more with that person. I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is not a dictatorship, and Sierra Leone will never become one. I mean, this is a very, very listening government. We are consulting. What we are doing here is part of the consultations, that we have an opportunity to input into the discourse is part of the consultation. I am also aware that a lot more of these kind of activities will be taking place. Somebody asked, why was this abandoned? You know, there was a reason for going into it.
Right.
We did not experiment with it because we wanted to explore new possibilities. We wanted to be innovative with our electoral system. We did because we had a world situation. Most part of the country was inaccessible. People were displaced all over the place. That was why we did it. So if you did it for a reason, that reason no longer existed after the 2002 election. So you had to revert. But we are saying, as a country that has experimented various forms of electoral system since independence, we are saying we have enough reason now to believe that the best way forward for this country to address the malaise of our sharper divisions, ethno-regional, ethno-tribal conflicts and misunderstandings, and ensuring that we'll get some of our brightest who might not like to subject themselves to the rigors of electoral politics and to exercise violence from our body politic. We believe that the PR system, a customized, tailor-made PR system, will be best for our country in this circumstance. I mean, considering the limited resources we have, we do not want to. I mean, you have seen by-elections, yeah, which are lost or won on top of corpses. You know, I mean, for the longest time. This is the only way we can address that forever and ever. So political parties determine their candidates. Let nobody fool themselves. Even in the current system, it's political parties that determine their candidates. I've seen very popular candidates who end up not getting the party symbol because their parties don't like them. Let us not fool ourselves. Let us have an honest, sincere conversation, and let us put Sierra Leone at the very heart of these conversations. We can leave our biases away, but I mean, being, you know, king, participants in the politics of our country for the longest time, we all know this is what happens. So,
all right, Dr. Samsise,
yes.
What's your take on the messages?
Well, of course, I think the Honorable Minister has got a baggage of, or a barrage of many comments to address.
I have addressed them already. You focus
but for me, I just want to pick from him. He talked about consultation. I would have expected that before tabling the electoral bill, those consultations should have been held widely with the people.
They were not held?
Well, he's yet to tell us, because what I hear, that those consultations have not been held. And people are really very much concerned and interested to take part, to give their own views. So one would be interested to know what process has informed the formulation of the new electoral bill that includes the PR system. As I said, people are very interested, people are concerned that they were not consulted, and it is like you want to take the knife from the child. The child must know why he or she has to give up the knife. Otherwise, he or she might tend to say, no, I don't understand, I will not agree. You see, so it's a big challenge for the government. So it's a concern that, you know, I wanted him to maybe explain further. So that I've gone to some places, and this is the hue and cry.
And personally, you've not seen or heard about any form of consultation?
No, that's exactly, and not only from my own side. I'm talking about what you know people are also saying.
So Mr. Minister, that's a very critical issue. That.
I have piloted many bills, some of the most contentious, quote unquote, bills through Parliament, contentious in the eyes of some people, but they are some of the most progressive legislations. I'm happy that Parliament rose up on those occasions to be counted amongst progressive parliaments in the world. So consultations do not have a commencement and end date. Even when we would have agreed to go down this path, we can still consult to engender, to enhance our understanding of the whole concept. You remember when I took the cybersecurity and crime bill to Parliament, for example, you know, I was asked to broaden the scope of consultations, not because consultations had not been done prior. You know, we did that, and that enriched the whole process. So consultations have gone into it. Even the Parliament debating it, right, will excite many people's interest in the bill. And they will now begin to follow the process and, you know, make their own contributions to enrich the discourse. So, I mean, I don't think we have missed any points in the process. It's here and now. So, I mean, let your views be known. I mean, you seem to have experiences to share also. I mean, let us take time off and contribute to this debate. I mean, which Sierra Leoneans hardly do. We wait after the process. They want to criticize it. That will be made say after death.
All right. So, are we fine with that, the issue of consultation?
Oh, yes, of course, he has agreed. I mean, although I would have said, you put the cart before the horse.
All right.
Because you are taking responsibility, big constitutional responsibility of people choosing their representatives, and you want parties to take over. Consultation should have been first,
even before taking the
before
bill.
formulating the bill that is now in Parliament. I totally agree with him, but it's about which one is first.
No. So we are not sequencing. We are saying they are not mutually exclusive. Yeah. You also see a situation with TRC. They have spoken about marginalization. How could a large population in the community, like I gave that example, 60% of people be marginalized? Their votes do not change anything. The CRC process also happened, you know, one of the recommendations. So what we are doing is in line with processes that have evolved over the period. Yeah.
All right. Let's quickly jump on to another issue that has to do with the current economic situation in Sierra Leone. Many people are concerned. Many of us Sierra Leoneans are concerned. Whilst many believe that we cannot pin this on the government, but government has a responsibility to help cushion the crisis on us, the citizens. First off, let's take a look at the petroleum products, because almost everything is being linked to that political commodity, fuel. With the current trend of how that is going, Doc, what do you think really is responsible? Can we blame what is happening currently in Sierra Leone to the global trend of fuel and the war between Ukraine and Russia?
Let me say that there are two highly politically motivated commodities in Sierra Leone, for that matter.
Yeah.
Petroleum and food. Any government must pay attention and take necessary steps to avert any crisis in those. Truly, for example, for food from 2007, 2008, up to a given period, that is when we had the crises of 4 Fs: financial, food, fertilizer, and also fuel. Crisis, 4 F crises. And from that time, we have been having this turbulence with food and petroleum products. And so currently, too, we have been getting this, especially when this Russia-Ukraine war came. But mind you, it's happened also. We had increases before the war. And now the war has exacerbated the situation. So it is not only affecting Sierra Leone, I admit. It's a global crisis because Russia is a big supplier of petroleum products. Ukraine is a big supplier of grains, you understand? And so when these two countries are at war, it means there's a big shortage of supply of those items in the global market. And common economics, demand and supply. If demand is constant and supply is falling, then it's bound to push price. And this is exactly what is happening. But coming back home, I think we also need to look at measures to mitigate at least the impact of that in our economy. Petroleum product, for that matter, has a multiplier effect on the economy. Everything hinges on that. You want to bring commodities into Sierra Leone, you have to use petroleum. I mean, if you are taking a ship and so forth, you want to move commodities within the country, you have to use transportation, and that affects the cost. Okay, people moving, they are affected by those things. Everything here, the factories, everything is affected. Okay, and so it is the most problematic commodity in terms of its effect on the economy. Now, what we need to do is how we manage the situation. We have taken examples, we have had examples from America, for example, when the president has said that to remove the federal tax on fuel, which has helped to stabilize the situation. We have seen what our neighboring president or head of state has done. There are examples worldwide, what actions have been taken. And for us here in Sierra Leone, we need to look at the price elements for the petroleum products. I know this is a composition of what government gets, what the dealers get, and so forth. Maybe there's need to look at that. I remember during the 2000, and when we had this crisis here in Sierra Leone, from 2007 onwards, that was a similar attempt that was made, looking at what government is supposed to get and cutting down. I recall also in before the 2018 elections, when the World Bank wanted to reduce, for us to remove subsidy on those key items, and the government said no. And that was the beginning of our crisis with the international partners. But then the country had a very stable situation as a result. So I think the government should think about this seriously, learn from experiences from other countries, how they have managed the situation to mitigate the impact on the people. We are a poor country. The level of poverty has increased over the time, and this is going to worsen the situation. As I was coming, I took the risk to take a vehicle to come. I saw queues. Again, Mr. Minister, I suspect the dealers want more. What I have seen along the road, There are no servicing. Vehicles are parked in this place, the same like last week. I suspect they are again trying to negotiate more. And it appears as what somebody has said, 25,000 is probably what they want. Now, if we get there, even when it has gone 22,000, you now see the roads, few vehicles are moving. I take my vehicle, I park it at PWD, because the place I am is town. So I have to come out from there and park it somewhere, take keke to town. When I finish, I take my vehicle, I go home. That is my coping mechanism.
That's how you conserve.
Oh yes, that's how I cope with the situation.
I mean, you mentioned that these, things started happening in 2007, 2018, because we started seeing the crisis in food supply, fuel, fertilizers. So what were the mechanisms? I mean, if you had any, what were the mechanisms that helped the situation then? I know now you've just mentioned, for example, of course, the COVID, the Russia and Ukraine war. These factors are now they've exacerbated these things. But what were the mechanisms in place to that helped in cushioning the effects then since 2017? I'm sorry, 2007.
Well, you look at fiscal policies. I mean, when the issue of access by people to resources is very difficult, you try to create a situation wherein you try to subsidize. Well, of course, I know economically, subsidy depends on your capacity. But nonetheless, there should always be that element of subsidy to cushion the situation. Okay, that's the first thing. The second one, we should not be too dependent on the vagaries of the international market. We must try by all means to boost our own domestic production. We cannot continue to be a consuming economy. We import to eat. Everything that comes, we have to bring it from outside. We don't produce to sell out and boost our own currency for it to appreciate. That's the big challenge, because when you depend from the outside and there is a problem in the global market, the impact will completely transfer into your economy. And people may refuse to understand that this is not a domestic issue, it's a global issue, and it can be politicized. And at the end of the day, the government may have its hands burnt. So that is why government will have to think of inward ways of dealing with the situation as to avert that kind of situation.
So you mentioned subsidy is one way.
It's one way.
But obviously, you also, there is also a condition about the condition of capacity you mentioned. Yes. If you are to just paint a picture as to what should be done right now, just create an alternative view. Give us an alternative view as to what should be done right now to help the current situation in the country.
As I said, petroleum, government will have to maybe take out some of the price elements that belong to them. And that will help to reduce the price so it becomes accessible. Economic activities will continue to run. We also have to look at people in positions, those who can really help the government. You see, government, it is becoming very clear that sometimes, even from time immemorial, if you have very good people who can help you to come out of a situation, make use of them. If you have people, like the minister will say, you have people who really can help you out. They may not be here in Sierra Leone. They have done outstandingly well outside. Bring them to help you out. Also, you can have a think tank, people who can sit and look at issues based on their various expertise, experience, and they will advise you in various areas. It's not a one answer fits all, and there are diverse issues to deal with, and therefore you will have to need diverse experts to assist in that kind of thing.
All right, Mr. Minister, so first off, let's have government's position on the current economic troubles we go through, which Sierra Leone is not, of course, not unique to Sierra Leone, it's a global crisis, but nations are taking individual rules and measures to cushion the crisis. So let's look at what government is doing.
Again, let me join you to paint the current global outlook. Yeah. For the first time in 3 decades, a country like Italy is hitting double-digit inflation. Yeah. The EU had projected a 3% growth. Today, we're talking about 4.1% contraction, right, because of what's happening. In neighboring Ghana, which you also pleasantly quote all of the time, when we want to compare, in April, Ghana hit an inflation rate of 23%, right? Currently, the Ghanaian cedi has depreciated to about 32%. Food prices have gone up about 29%. And Ghana, which had crafted Ghana Beyond Aid, has now called on the IMF to develop a country program for them. So this is to tell you how very serious this crisis is, right? I mean, I use Ghana because before now it used to be one of the most stable, one of the most stable around here. So that is how serious it is, right? Petroleum products, you know. Yeah. So Dr. Sisi has spoken to it quite well, but let me also put a few things there so that we all have a meeting of the minds on where we are and where we're going to. Sometime in 2019, a barrel of crude oil cost around $66 per barrel. In Sierra Leone, the reason why it went so down, COVID had just started. There were global movement restrictions started to be implemented, right, as a way to curtail it. In Sierra Leone here, the price of petroleum products was 7,000 per liter, right? Because we related well with the global price there, $66 a barrel. Fast forward today, in 2022, it is $113, $112 a barrel. Okay? So we have what we have here. So, I mean, this one, we have been very, very fidel to this law of gravity. You know, Sierra Leoneans say anytime something goes up, it never comes down. But we have proven that to be wrong. Under President Bill, I mean, we have seen fuel prices go up in the global market. We increase prices. Anytime they come down, you have benefited from it about thrice or so in the life of this administration. So this is where we are. So again, beyond crude oil prices, you know, we call them crude oil. So that means they need to be refined. Refined, yeah, which is another layer of investment. Yeah. Refined them. Once refined, they need to be transported and distributed when they get here. Of course, you have spoken about the markup, you know, the premium, the taxes, and all of that. So let's talk about the transportation. I think this is really good for Sierra Leoneans to understand. Transportation is one of the biggest cost factors in this industry. It is a shame, and it's very sad to note that since the Civil War ended in 2002, Sierra Leone still remains categorized as a high-risk country. So when shippers have to come to Sierra Leone, the insurance premium is usually very high. It literally shoots through the roof. That is added onto the final price of transportation. So here, as if that is not enough, when you bring your ships here, because we have actually not exported anything for the longest time, the ships go empty. So they make sure they input all of that into the price of transportation, the freight charges here. That is serious.
And container costs too.
Container costs, yeah, you know. So what we have done since 2002, when the late former President Kaba announced the war done, nothing has been done about that. I'm aware that last year, His Excellency's government made a very strong case to the International Maritime Organization, citing we are one of the most peaceful countries in the world, fourth most peaceful in Africa, one of the most peaceful in the world. We have had successive, you know, changes of government without rancor, without any who has. So therefore, we deserve. So that conversation is going on. We really hope it pays off, and we are delisted from a high-risk country. That will further better our situation, even though the problem that they will still go empty remains. And so, just so that we get a global picture of what's happening here, right? So, It's also important to note for our listeners and viewers that just when COVID struck, the OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, came together and said, look, you know what? I mean, flights are not happening, our products are not being used. So they decided to reduce daily production by 10 million barrels a day. Okay, so since the near resumption of normal businesses, they have only been able to add something like 850,000 barrels a day. So it means the world is still a yawning gap of over 9 million metric tons a day. You know, but you understand they are a cartel.
Right.
You know, control supply and get better deals. Right? He mentioned the basic law in economics. Yeah, demand and supply determining prices and all of that. So when that is done, that is one side of it. You know, just to let us appreciate as Sierra Leoneans. I'm happy my colleague here is talking. We want to put this conversation really in context. Yeah. Apart from that, then, you know, you talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia supplies about 53% of the fuel needs of Africa, petroleum products to Africa. And that puts into context the age-old aphorism that when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. He spoke about grain in places like Egypt and other Algeria. There's quite a serious problem there because they have principally relied on grain supplies and other things from those. But we also rely on some part of it, our flour and other things. You know this. Yeah. So it's a serious problem. OPEC took a decision to reduce daily production by $10 million barrels a day. Then came the Russia and Ukraine crisis, leading to Africa's 53% oil supply, you know, in jeopardy. You know, and more interestingly, you know, what has government done with all of these things?
Yeah, because I was just going to ask that.
What has government done?
All of these things, what are the measures?
Yeah, what are the things government has done? You know, so it's important that Sierra Leoneans get to know this. So we begin to commend government for not standing arms akimbo while all of these problems continue to impact our people. To this day, this administration has given something like $87 million in foreign currency support to oil marketing companies so that they can import materials, they can import much needed petroleum products for the country. But for that, we could have had this problem way back, right? So that is very important to note. The other point that should be noted is, you know, Dr. Sisi mentioned that subsidies.
Yeah.
Well, government has done various interventions. This is a people-centered government. We cannot sit by and see our people go through untold sufferings. So we have, to this day, from January to the end of June, expended in excess of 380 billion leones, right? So you mentioned government letting go of some of the taxes. Yes, some of the taxes have actually been let go of, right? Yes. So we have subsidized in excess of 380 billion leones, right? I mean, this is to ensure that our people do not get hardest hit by, you know, continuing rise of global petroleum products, right? So that is important. It's also important to note that because we know once this happens, there's a knock-on effect on all other products. Government has taken bold steps. We have also done other interventions, and I want to share this with you. Yeah, this was very well noted in the Minister of Finance's speech at the launch of the denominated currency, right? Do you remember that? Dr. Sise, did you follow that one? Just so that we all understand, I'm quoting directly one paragraph that generously spoke to the efforts government has made to continue to ameliorate the current situation our people have been forced to go through. Yeah. So I mentioned we have spent to date by way of subsidy to petroleum products 380 billion leones from January to June, right? Electricity subsidy for 2022 alone is estimated at 538 billion leones. You know the cost price we buy from the car power. Government has had to pay the difference on behalf of our people. So we have had to pay electricity subsidy in the region of 538 billion leones. Fuel subsidy 2021 was in the region of 248 billion leones. And Similarly, subsidy on rice imports in the form of duty and tax waivers was 397 billion in 2021 and 45 billion in January to March 2022. Yeah. So this means in the first half of this year alone, total subsidy on these three products, petroleum product, rice, and electricity, averages at 963 billion leones. So that means government is not just seated doing nothing about it. But for these interventions, we could have had a more dastardly inflation rate, similar probably to what is happening in Lebanon. In Lebanon, a food basket now costs about 400%. They have experienced 400% increase. In Sri Lanka, let me share this. In Sri Lanka, government has literally shut down. Schools have shut down, right? People have been asked to stay home and work from home. They have only fuel for very limited supply for emergency services only. For the ambulance. They are not paying any credit towards anything, whether it's domestic, IMF, or anybody. That country has literally ground to a halt. You know, so we have to be thankful. We have a very skilled pilot. President Bio did say when he was launching the national ID card, he did say, yes, I could see turbulence ahead, but he's a very trained, trusted, and tried pilot. He has assured us of safe landing. So
with these efforts or these interventions government has made, many people would say these are not sustainable because at the end of the day, we, as a nation, we need to generate resources. We need to do all of these. So what do we now do in terms of production? Because from what is happening, every country is now saying, I have to take care of our own. So what is Sierra Leone doing? Why are we putting effort in terms of production, say for food, for example, and all of that?
Yeah. So I forgot. Let me just finish that bit of it. Some 1-2 points. You know, I mean, this is also a public education forum. Yeah. So we realized when President Bio took over, he did a risk. This government did a risk analysis. And found it was too risky. Very, very risky for the level of storage we had, right? So a second importer was brought in. About a month or so, His Excellency commissioned the APP terminals. They refurbished the entire fuel farm. Today, this country can boast of a storage capacity of about 200,000 metric tons, right? Specialists in this sector say, as per the current available data. I mean, if you get that to full capacity, you only need to import twice a year. So that is the first practical step taken to insulate us from these regular fuel price increases and what have you, right? His Excellency has been very bold. We've taken that step. So what now remains is how do we ensure that this storage capacity is fully utilized? That conversation is ongoing right now amongst private sector players in government with a view to coming out with a more sustainable approach to the fuel crisis. But let me add this caveat. Joe Biden addressed the U.S. on Thursday. He told his people, look, we have to brace up for very challenging times, for fuel price increases and all of those. You listen to that, Dr. Say? Yes, he was very bold about it. He was clear. And to know that this is the reality of the situation, you know the U.S. has reached out to countries they have not spoken to for the longest time. You know, I mean, outreach has been made to Venezuela, for example, to encourage them to produce.
All countries.
President Biden has visited Saudi, you know, to encourage them to increase their production. OPEC, the EU is talking to Iran to return to negotiations so that it could all increase. So this is a global problem of very, very, very serious implications. So all of these things are happening. Again, the other thing we are doing on the domestic front, analysis have indicated that these subsidized petroleum products, for the most part, are used by the big companies and the mining companies. The mining companies and big manufacturers. So following extensive conversations with them, we have now agreed they either import their own petroleum products or they pay in dollars. All of this is to ensure that our people for whom the products are subsidized have the benefits of the subsidy.
All right.
Because traditionally subsidy, does not necessarily benefit the intended people.
Stay with me. Let me bring in Dr. Sam Sisi on some of the issues the minister has highlighted with regards interventions made
Yes.
in the sector.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, you know, these are the normal economic responses. But what worries me is the impacts on the ordinary man, the cost of living and livelihoods. I collect data. Maybe the minister will be interested. I will show him.
That will be good.
Data, food basket data, a set of basic food items from April 2018 to March 2022. And I saw that food items increased, the value, the cost of food items increased almost 3 times. Besides, I also did a household budget for food. For a family of 6, the average family size in Sierra Leone is around 6. And I did a budget, Mr. Minister, you will be interested to know that that budget means a family of 6 to have good food will require more than 2,750,000 leones a month. Juxtapose that with the minimum wage of 600,000. It is less than 10% of that bill, of that budget. And it is not the only basic need. This is just food. There are other needs, including medical, education, and so forth. Yeah? Also, if you want to increase the wage bill, the minimum wage, to meet at least the food cost, it will be around 11 times. So, Mr. Minister, the impact on the people it basically has to do the cost of basic items. How do you ensure that they are able to access, they are able to purchase? Access means physical access, the items are available, and economic access, you have the purchasing power, you have the money to buy. Now, if you give somebody 600,000 a month, a bag of rice, for example, Mr. Minister, is almost gone, right? What will remain for other needs? So one strategy is also to look at what you pay your servants. If you leave it as it is being eroded.
So you're calling for an increase in
no.
Yeah,
we'll join that conversation.
This is very serious.
That's a conversation
this is so intriguing.
And I've also done on building materials.
The more times change, the more they remain the same.
Building materials, they have also increased almost 2 times, more than 2 times. Transportation, also 2 times almost.
Right.
I'm using the government prices for buses. I have been monitoring these prices. So you find out that these are the basic needs of people, and they are increasing 2 to 3 times or more. And so how these things, these policies they are taking are impacting on the ordinary people, I think this is what government should be looking at. What will they do for these people to be able to catch up with this kind of situation so they don't become more and more impoverished? Poverty has risen seriously recently as a result of all what is happening. So I think as much as you are looking at up the macroeconomy, look down to the people, the microeconomy, the small, those people down there.
Yeah.
Just before you come, so let me ask this question that I asked the minister. Literally, it should have been you first. The issue of production, because you once Minister of Agriculture.
Well, actually, I always say that my own time, because of the interventions, one of it was to bring Nerika rice 3 months a year. We developed swamps, and they were able to cultivate 2 times a year minimum. And because of that, by the time the old rice goes, new one comes. And because we did it in a big way, we saw that rice was constantly in the market, domestic rice. And Mr. Minister, domestic rice is more highly nutritious, in fact, even healthier than the imported rice. This imported rice can be there for some years before they bring it. The issue of dumping is also affecting that. The quality is not good. And yet we pay through our nose for those imported items.
Yep.
Okay, so we need to, this is an issue. When I left that ministry, the bag of rice was 170,000.
Which year was it?
I left in 2015, end of 2015.
Okay, by then we have not had all of these things you and I are talking about in studio today.
No, well, no, I told him, Mr. Minister, this crisis of the 4Fs started.
Okay, they started rearing their heads. They are full blown now.
They were beginning to mature. And now
they just started rearing their heads.
Yeah.
They are full blown now.
Now they have grown. In fact,
almost threatening to consume the world.
See, so,
but we will not be consumed.
So, going back, this is not a blame game.
No. That's why.
But a continuation of course, you the politicians have always said, and of course, democracy advocates have always said, governance is continuity.
Correct.
Government is continuity. So, going back, you mentioned when you were there. I mean, but when you left that office, there were mechanisms taken that many people thought. I mean, those mechanisms were not sustainable and were the start of collapse in the sector, where we were giving direct cash transfer to farmers and a whole lot of other things that many people said, I mean, the impact will not be that all because this is just so. Looking from that point to where we are now, are we making inroads in ensuring that productivity is what we all look for and have a bumper harvest that Sierra Leone will be able to feed herself?
Well, we have to look at many parameters. First is price of food items. Are they going down? Okay, especially the staple. I will say no. During my own time, we saw. In fact, the expansion of cassava and gari, which is an alternative to rice, cassava, was all over the country. That had helped a lot to bring down the demand for rice. If you just leave rice as it is, it's going to put enormous pressure, not only on the demand for it and therefore the need for your forex to import it. Through people who will come to you that they want forex to import rice, and they go out there. I know it. I have monitored it. They go out there, send the money, they bring other imports. They will not buy those things they ask you your money for. You see, that trick is also happening. And every time we count it, this money went for rice. This money went for other food items. And truly, when they get the money, not all of it is brought back as food. That's another challenge. So I think price.
So you're saying the concessions or the waiver they give for some equipment, people use other things to have their selfish.
They have other things to do, store it out there, bring other things. It happens.
Go ahead.
The price is one. The second one is supply. Is it available? Domestic food items, are they available around? Okay, that's the second indicator of how we are doing. And I think price is very key. Supply, very key. And supply, for that matter, influences price. If there is high supply of quantities, like it happened in my time, prices went down. Even eggs, because we had a lot of poultry, large scale, that were established through my own intervention support to private sector, the price of eggs went down, up to 500, up to the time I left. But now they have gone up. Okay, I mean, I cannot attribute it totally to our domestic issues. Some of them, once they are imported, for example, you take poultry, you have to import the feed, and they are also subject to the vagaries of the international market as well. So that also influences price. But I think one would say that the government has to dive deep in terms of looking at making the economy productive. This is the one way you can really turn around the economy. You have to restructure. You don't have to be traditional, looking at those things that were being done before and we continue to do. There are other potentials in the economy we need to exploit. Okay? That is also very important. You have to restructure the economy to make sure that it becomes more productive. As I always say, a productive economy is one that gets stronger, that builds your currency to appreciate. But if you are consuming, it means you are spending what you have and you are not producing that money. Your balance of payments and other things, they are all tumbled up. And so you get overheating of the economy, and you have to call IMF, who will come and help you to stabilize like Ghana has done. And we have done several times, because the economy has heated up as a result of the imbalances in the economy.
All right. Just quickly before I move to the Minister of Information, Dr. Sisi, you know, this is something you enjoyed as well whilst you were in office. The fact that for fuel, for example, especially petrol, government is said to be the biggest consumer of fuel, because you know you drove and you drive these big engines.
Not true. The industries, as he said.
Yes. No, outside the private.
Outside the private sector.
Yes,
within government.
Yes, within government. How do we conserve fuel? So somebody was telling me, can we get? But the person was very much calculated to say, you know, we are not going to do it in the build up to 2023. Let's wait after 2023, the campaign. That is to say, he said, because the previous government enjoyed, the V8 engines, because they have to go to terrains to campaign and all of that. And so the currents should also enjoy that. We should not be biased. But do we look at ways of conserving fuel, especially from within governments, just so we're able to see what can be done in kicking out some of the odds in the sector? And also the issue of governments having a hand in, a very big and visible hand in the sector. Like go back to see, can we reclaim the NP share we sold, and let governments have a big share in all of this.
As a former senior civil servant, I should have been a PS long time ago during the time of J.B. Ali as Secretary to President at that time, because of the kind of work I was doing for him and all that. But I decided to stay professional. The experience has been that government has been a bad debtor to itself. Okay, before NPA was government, Guma Valley was government. But yet, we go and borrow from our children. We are not paying back the bills. You understand? We are wrecking our children. So one way we have to do it is to cut down government expenditure on the basic services. Okay? Vehicles, for example, the type of vehicles we use. So there are some countries that are using small vehicles. You go to Rwanda, for example, another place, they're using small vehicles, economical, easy to deal with, okay? And they will also reduce congestion, because these big vehicles are moving with, they take space. So this is one thing we need to look at. And I don't know, because I was handling budgeting in the Ministry of Agriculture as Director of Planning, Policy Planning, M&E and Statistics. And we used to have a quota per month for fuel. And even later, when the GSM came, there was also an allocation. So there must be what we call normatives, limits that one person can have, and not beyond that. If you want beyond that, buy it.
From your pocket?
Yes. The type of vehicles is one key area, but even the amount of fuel that is given, if you have a small vehicle, the consumption is less. And if you want to use more than what is given to you, you buy. Okay? So I think these are some of the things that we also need to look at. I understand they also want to enjoy my big brother here. but no, for the future. No, this is for Sierra Leone. We have to look at this, the type of vehicles that government officers use. If I want to enjoy a very good vehicle, alternatively, we have to go back to the hire purchase system. In a system in which I can afford or I can be availed a vehicle to pay for it over time and own it. So that if you tell me after offering hours, I cannot use government vehicle,
you have your private vehicle.
I don't have to. I will, in fact, many people prefer to use their private vehicles to disguise. Right, Mr. Minister?
You are an old spirit in the graveyard. Old spirit in the graveyard coming from you. I could not agree more.
You know, so you pack government vehicles, and that will save repairs and maintenance of vehicles, the consumption, and they care. Some people rough government property. I mean, look at government quarters, you look at the OA villas, people are there, they are living, they are enjoying, they are not paying anything, and yet cannot maintain that place for him or her and family. It is government. So there are certain things we have to look at to cut down.
All right, interesting. So, Mr. Minister, what do you make of some of the things that many people look forward to seeing government implement in ensuring that we're able to just manage the crisis we're in?
Yeah, so, he spoke about the 4 Fs. We have also had our own fair share of difficult times.
Right.
We had, we now have, we had to deal with many things. We have had COVID here. When government implemented movement restrictions, I mean, we knew that we have citizens who live by the day. They have to come out there to do things before they could eke out a living. So government did direct cash transfers to those categories of Sierra Leoneans across the country, right? So that was done. We also realized during the same period that you had people whose capital, particularly for small businesses, had considerably eroded because of the crisis. So government did direct cash transfers to those people. You remember the cash transfers that NACSA did? So that was also done. I mean, targeted Sierra Leoneans from across the eye. During the same period, we made sure, because the entertainment industry was one of the hardest hit, right? We gave 3 months salaries to all of those who stood, all of the hotel workers and whatever, so that they will not be laid off, because when the overheads increase, I mean, the proprietors will say, no, what am I keeping you for? You better go home and help your families to work from home, right? So we didn't want that to happen because it will further constrain the economy. So we opened that up. We did all of those transfers within our midst. It was during the same period that we recalibrated and launched the Munafa Fund, so that we can give small businesses some capital to get going at a single interest rate. 9%, I think it's about 9%. To date, we have given 5 million, 5,000 some people, and some more validation is now being done across the country. I just came from Kono yesterday, and in Kono, the Munafa team was there to cross-check, right, the listing they had. So all of these things are happening. These are direct impact projects on the people themselves, right? Like you say, when COVID broke, we knew it was going to have debilitating effects on the economy. So that's why we quickly act out the quick impact economic recovery program, right? Excerpts of those, some aspects of those are still being played out. But more importantly, on a sustainable basis, we cannot continue, like to quote my brother here, rely on the vagaries of international markets or all of the things out there. So when President Bill was sworn in, you remember, he spoke about diversifying the economy,
right,
accentuating tourism, reinforcing agriculture, and bringing the blue economy full throttle, right? That is clairvoyance, because we knew that any country that is a net importer of literally everything you require will always have a balance of payment issue. You will always be in the kind of situation that economy. Yeah. So that was thought out, but again, COVID knocked that one out. Because he was talking about feeds, you have to import feeds in if you want to develop the poultry sector, which is an aspect of agriculture. You have to bring in many things, fertilizers, tractors, and with the whole world literally shut down, that took quite a knock, right? But like all things, one of the very first things he did was a loud and clear clarion call to all Sierra Leoneans to invest in agriculture as the future of our country. He even made it mandatory for all senior appointees to invest in farming as a precondition. I'm very pleased, and you also, I mean, the juries out there, many of my colleagues are into farming, some of them more prosperous farmers. Well, they have bigger farms, right? I mean, that is happening now. So people only need to see that as an example. Farming is becoming sexy. It's becoming the end thing. The president has a large acreage of farms in Mashaka and in his hometown. The financial secretary, the minister of finance, many other people that I know. So this is not for some old woman who could not afford the next day's meal. Everybody is now into it, right? And to take that commitment to another level, Dr. says here, we brought in massive farm equipment, about 200 and 400 and something pieces of various farm equipment. When that clarion call was heeded, you know, you saw on social media all over the place, people were saying, oh, we have X amount, we need combined harvesters to come and support us, you know, to do A, B, C, D. So the fact that we had a bumper harvest, now the call became, we need this support in combined harvesters to be able to harvest our yield, our farm products, and blah, blah, blah. That means we are getting there. I mean, it was delayed. We had COVID, the world was shut down, you cannot import some of the most, because you want to go beyond this Adam and Eve mode of farming with hoes and cutlasses, right? You wanted to mechanize. So that took a knock, but it's resurging again, right? Tourism, we had attracted. We started receiving real serious tourist arrivals into the country. Right, government knocked off all GST and related taxes relating to tourism. So we started really getting increasing tourist arrivals until COVID struck. You remember we even hosted the Bamako, the Budapest Bamako rally here. Yeah. They were meant to have returned the following year. It didn't happen because the world was shut down, right? But that is beginning to rebound again. Yeah, courtesy of good policies and, you know, rebranding and repositioning this country to get a fair share of the tourist market. The blue economy, we have started surveillancing our territorial waters. We have imposed, remember we imposed bans, periodic bans, so that, you know, the fries could also grow up into mature fishes, so that we can use that resource on a very sustainable basis, right? Yes, so all of these things are happening, but we are not there yet. You know, I just came from a wild wheel tour in the northeastern part of the country. At one of the town hall meetings, a very able-bodied young man stood up to say, look, Mr. Minister, I have not eaten for the whole day. This was around 2 p.m. rather, in a big congregation. We were discussing this kind of issues. My typical response, which I like to share here, you are an economist. I remember in Form 5, which was the last, in MBA class, I did some little touch of economics. But I still remember this from my Form 5 lesson. My teacher did say Thomas Robert Malthus, who was the population theorist, did say every human being coming on earth does not only come with a mouth to eat, but also a pair of hands to walk. Here was a very able young guy, energetic, looking well fed, and this was what he said to me. So, Dr. Sir, I'm merely saying, this plays right into your quarter. We have to encourage all of us to involve ourselves in some form of independent livelihood, right? Agriculture provides a ready alternative. I know a minister friend here, he's into fish farming. 2 days ago, he brought me a bucket full of fish, for 1 million leones. He is selling now all over the place. This, you know, he's invited me to his fish farm home. He says he has over 50,000.
The catfish.
Yeah. Oh, he saw it. He saw it as well. Yes. So this is the kind of thing we are talking about. I mean, I know you have been Minister of Agriculture. You definitely must have invested in agriculture.
Definitely.
I hope so. But other politicians sit here. I've sparred here with some politicians. It's only about raining down government. We are not doing this. But for God's sake, it is not an offense. It is not a criminal offense for leading politicians, whoever, to invest in farming. This is the only way we are going to reduce our vulnerability to shocks and other kinds of uncertainties in the global market. You know, the president of the greatest country in the world, Joe Biden, 2 days ago addressed the American people. On Thursday it was. He enjoined them to brace up, to tighten their belts for the uncertainties ahead as it relates to fair prices and other things.
All right.
Our U.S. is the world's biggest producer of oil, petroleum products. Sierra Leone does not produce that.
So we should,
they have a huge reserve. But the bad news is because they took out 1 million, 1 million barrels, 1 million metric tons a day, that is beginning to affect the reserve.
All right.
So that is why they are, even in Africa, other parts of the world, they are now signing MOUs with oil-producing nations. So
let me quickly...
The picture
right.
is for all of us to interpret.
We have to
Venezuela of all.
We have to
Venezuela, they reach out.
We have to bring in our viewers, you know, into the conversation. Interestingly, as you talk about the fish, I was in a forum where somebody said, "Well, you are not minister, all the sell fish now must know."
The minister of youth is a big fish farmer.
This is the mentality now.
Yes.
But Dr.
For the last couple of years, I actually just eat what I grow. I grow what I eat in terms of rice.
Right.
I'm not taking any media there. If you come visit me,
you should invite me.
No, if you visit me during lunchtime, ocular demonstration is no proof.
You should invite me during harvest time so that I will come home with something.
Oh, no, so you come help me during the work. That's why you come help me first.
So, Dr. just quickly, I mean, what should be done at this point before we bring in the viewers? What should be done now?
Pertaining to
the economy and getting things moving.
Well, I think I've mentioned a couple of areas. Unfortunately for this government, owing foreign direct investments is problematic for the very reasons we've been talking about. They are risk averse because of the unstable global economy. But government has to, together with partners, have to look at ways of supporting our indigenous investment in productive sectors. I always keep saying that we must really refocus our economy to make it more productive an economy rather than being overly consuming. If we don't address this, we'll always be very, very highly vulnerable. Okay, even Ghana, one of the things that helped them to turn around before this trouble came is really boosting the productive sector, you know, so that they export and they also generate a lot of forex, which backs up their local currency, their national currency. There is also need to look at our colleagues in the diaspora. Ghana is a classical case of what the system they have put in place to encourage them to come and invest. And the kind of security they get, even when they are not in the country, they are away, their resources are being utilized, and they have created a lot of impact. You go to the infrastructure industry, you go to other areas, you know, they're creating that kind of impact, they're creating job opportunities, they're boosting the economy, GDP, and even export. I've visited banana areas that their own diaspora people established, and they export. So that is one area that maybe we need to look at. How do we create that kind of environment, learn from Ghana as to attract these people to come and invest? Right. And that will go a long way to attract them to come home. Once you have an investment here, it means you have your mind and soul and everything here to protect it. But if you don't have an investment, you don't have a stake in the economy, there wouldn't be that much commitment to it. Right. They will continue to stay out there until their dead bodies come.
All right. Let me run through some messages. So many of them. That's a good one. Yoki Musa is saying this country's hardship started in 2019 to 2022, not because of Ukraine and Russia war. Let us look at Rwandans. They had involved in the genocide war, but for now they are one of the developing countries. Let us look at Sierra Leone. We had 11 years of civil war, and still we look for development. I'm going to only take messages that speak to the issues. Abraham Father, blogger, is saying, I totally agree the fuel issue is a global problem, but the government needs to stand by its people and try to make the situation easier. Right? My district shares two boundaries with Guinea and Liberia, but for now, because of the fuel crisis in the country, I'd rather buy petrol in Guinea and Liberia with goods like 12 Leon. Okay, Yoki. Amado Jawa is saying the economic crisis is worsened by the government. The tax on petrol is too much. Check out also for import duties. These high tax rates are responsible for the rapid increase in prices. Saloon fuel is the last quality in the world, but very expensive at home for pump price. Why? I mean, Denke is asking. Wonder Mati is saying, why is this government always quick to compare other countries when it comes to negative issues? When are we going to hear them comparing national developments to other countries? Mr. Minister, stop comparing big economies. Okay. Austrian Kamara is saying, the present global economic shock emanates from a broad-based factors ranging from geopolitical tensions and fiscal and monetary policies and interventions. When fiscal policies are not disciplined, especially with developing countries like Sierra Leone, the economic supply index is a way to measure economic growth. Proper and soft interest rates can help. Nations are hooked to unfavorable OPEC plus oil market policies for the supply chain. To cushion shocks, a government must avoid fiscal indiscipline that results to a budget deficit as we are experiencing. As of Ghana, they have lately had fiscal indiscipline. They introduced the levy tax only to gain revenue. However, it's brought a fist fight in parliament and a march last week by a group called Arise Ghana. Fiscal policies in a fragile nation must be disciplined. Just going through these messages is a whole lot of work. The people of Sierra Leone are tired of, Ali Wassan Conte saying, if the government was given $80 million, I don't think the fuel price would have reached this high. Musa Mans is saying, Mr. Minister, we need substantial action, not find a solution to fix the battered economy. All right, Mr. Minister, we voted you in to make life easy for the people, but your government is making life very hard for the people. Okay. So many messages. I think I have to hold the messages there. Unfortunately, I cannot go through all of the messages. Dr. Sam Sisse, let dog dream left now in Belay. The government has a solution. This country in their new direction manifesto. Lamin Denke. Guys, I'm sorry. I have to hold the messages there. There's so many. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. But let me allow you to respond to this as you give your parting shot and see what's Sierra Leoneans should also be their own role in making things better.
Yes, well, I think the issue of expenditure control is becoming a concern in the country. And no matter what you say, African Express has been coming out with a lot of it. Actually, the expectation from especially the President, His Excellency, was in that direction to cut down expenditure,
right,
so that the pressure on the budget will be minimized. But we have seen an expansion in expenditure, I would say in vertical and horizontal way. In vertical in terms of increases for some people, horizontal in terms of the number of people that have been employed, which has brought a lot of pressure on the budget. I think the government needs to look at that. And also even the number of ministries. I mean, to be very frank, as a Sierra Leonean, we can cut down. We can cut down on the number of ministries. You know, try to assemble some of them so as to reduce costs, Mr. Minister. I think that is possible, because each person wants to feel important. Even if it's only to clean this place, once you create an office, is to make it, for you to know that it is important. And they will put all pressure for you to realize that it is important through budget. And that's why you always have this big budget battle during the budget hearing. So I think that is one area. Another suggestion is about this mandatory landed catch. I don't know whether you understand that one, Mr. Minister. The fisheries. The blue economy is good, but the catch leaving our country is so significant that we are losing a lot of revenue that would have generated something, forex, that will build up our economy and back up our currency. There has been a policy of mandatory landed catch.
30% or so?
Yes. Are you effecting that? When you look at the price of fish in the market, again, the simple economics, we know, the supply is very limited. It will interest you, Mr. Minister, in my analysis, that Mina has gone up from April 2018 to March 2022, 10,000 times the price increase. Bonga has gone up also in thousands of times. These are domestic items. And fish generally, you know, so there are domestic items, the prices are going up because of limited supply. So you also need to focus on those areas to make sure that the landed catch is for us to benefit from our own natural resources.
It should not be taken away.
Should not be taken away, or at least a significant part of it by law should be landed here so we can benefit from it. We cannot continue to import. We still import those items as well.
Right.
You know, we are blowing hot and cold.
All right. Mr. Minister, finally.
Yes, thank you very much. You know, I had quite a couple of concerns coming from my compatriots, yeah. So somebody noted that we like to compare ourselves when it comes to negative things. Sierra Leone is leading when it comes to education, the reforms we are making, when it comes to the investments we are making, and the educational outcomes that we have started seeing. That is why, so every major global education summit, His Excellency is invited to play a key role. So that is not something negative. That is something that we are inspiring the world about, many other countries. So that's for that Sierra Leonean who does not see anything good coming from here and thinks we always cite bad examples. Here is a country that has abolished the death penalty. Many countries cling on to it with all their might. Many African governments. We have abolished the death penalty in spite of all the reservations people had, right? This same president, under President Bill, was bold and audacious enough to repeal the criminal libel laws. You know, it takes a very bold person who has his heart in the right place and the country at heart to do those things that inspires the world. You know, somebody was saying we just cite negative things, yeah? So, I mean, just some of the things I needed to mention, right? Both in investment and in reforms, yeah? So that person should think through these things before they make long blanket statements. Yeah. So my colleague has mentioned about the need to capacitate small indigenous businesses. Of course, I could not agree more. Definitely, we have to build on the success story of the Munafa Fund. We have to grant access to credit to small businesses without asking for their great-grandparents' birth certificates and every bank account in Swiss bank, right? So His Excellency, at the launch of the denominated currency, made this point that banks should now start lending to small businesses to strengthen them, to capacitate them, to grow their businesses with all the positive multipliers on the economy. So that has been said already, and I know this is something the bank governor treats very seriously. That will be looked into. Again, I heard the Sierra Leonean say they import the worst quality of fuel to Sierra Leone. I think worst grade, as if they produce this exclusively for Sierra Leone, right? We all buy from the same market. 53% of our petroleum products are supplied by Russia. It is not brought as imported to Sierra Leone, yeah? So we do not have that, except if we say Africa gets the worst oil grades, then we can have a conversation to have. But Sierra Leone does not go in search of the worst grade to have. You know, let us begin to see something good in our country, right? We have had situations where Sierra Leone has led the way all along. Well, I mean, we admire, we appreciate the progress in Rwanda. We look forward to making Sierra Leone a Rwanda someday because we're addressing the fundamentals. Rwanda did not build up overnight. After the Civil War, they have had long, you know, President Kagame has been president in Rwanda since the end of the Civil War. He's still president, so he continues his agenda. But let's have that conversation, because it's easy to throw in these boss things just like that, right, without looking at the other fundamentals. I mean, I understand, and government realizes we have challenging times here, like the rest of the world does. As a government, we are sparing no effort to ensure that we address it so that we can ameliorate the suffering of our people.
Right.
I mean, my wife, my family members do not have a privileged market where they buy from. We all buy from the same one port, the same Dove Court, the same Kuto Road, in Kenema, the same fisheries, the same every place. So when prices go up, they are bound to affect everybody. Nobody asks for a color, for status, or something. So that is why, as government, we remain very committed to ensure that, I mean, if we have to recalibrate policies to ensure that we'll get the much needed impact on our people, we'll give them a reprieve, some relief. That is something
Thank you.
This government will not hesitate to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mohamed Amansori, Minister of Information and Communications. Thank you very much. Dr. Sam Sise, former Minister of Agriculture and Presidential Advisor to former President Nkrumah. It's been a pleasure having both of you here. We apologize for the absence of Sori Sememara and Marie Bob Kande for not showing up. Sori called in, and Marie Bob Kande, we are looking forward. But we apologize for the absence. For those of you who missed part of the show, remember a repeat of the show comes up on Thursday at 10 p.m. A fresh edition comes up on Sunday, same time, same station here. The show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Wise Bangura. Take care of yourself, and until next week, let's take a trip down to the Housemate Salon show, where the prime is all set for us to know who goes home tonight. Take care of yourself, and bye-bye.